everything in me was saying, let's quit. And I remember looking up and I see my people that I started climbing this mountain with, they're coming down and I'm hours from the summit. And so like I started to compare myself. You start to compare yourself to other people like, dang, they made it to the top. I want to be happy for them, but low key, I'm jealous. Like I'm tired. I want to go back down to base camp. And I remember the wind had knocked me around because I lost 15 pounds in 6 days. And there was a moment where I took a step back and I felt a hand on my back. And I heard a voice say, keep going, Tia. And it was I call her my partner in climb, Sheena. And I think we all need partners in climb to help us in those moments where we do want to quit. So optimism got me to the top, and my partner in climb, my peak partners, my community, like they helped me keep climbing. Preparing for a mountain next week, and I'm taking a group. You know, just like when you lead groups, you just got to keep their energy levels up on top of keeping my own energy levels up. So, yeah.
Okay. Are you communicating with that group like every day or every week or something every like day. That?
You know, you always want to keep engagement. And so, you know, we have a group chat. We're sharing workouts in the group chat. And then just positivity. Because a lot of times when it comes to hiking or climbing mountains, you know, some of these people have never hiked a mountain before. So it's mostly mental.
Okay.
So we just want to make sure they're mentally trained before we get on that mountain.
And how do you select these people? Just out of curiosity. Like, how's that happen?
I would say they selected me, right?
Oh, okay.
So I put the post out there. I said, hey, I want to take a group of people to the Guadalupe Peak. I did this last year. And, you know, people came to me, and we don't pick everybody because I'm not yet ready to take large groups to this particular mountain, especially if they're amateur hikers.
Okay.
And so, you know, we were selective in the mindset. Why do you want to climb this mountain? Why do you want to climb a mountain? And just asking questions like that, probing questions. You good? You doing all right?
I'm doing great. I just got back from a backpacking trip in Utah.
Oh.
And longest slot canyon in the world, I believe. We went down Buckskin Gulch, which was these are slot canyons, very narrow, walking through water. And then we emptied out into what's called the Paria Canyon, which it must have inspired Star Wars or movies that I've seen, movie sets I've seen. It was just unbelievable. Anyway, what was interesting about it in terms of my past hikes and summits and climbs is that it wasn't that hard. Like, I'm used to going on a challenging hike. That's just what I do. I train, I hike, and I repeat. That's what I do. But this time, it just wasn't that hard. And it was actually kind of fun. You know, I didn't have to worry about training. And
You went by yourself?
No, I went with a group of about 10 people. No one knew each other except for the guide. And I wouldn't even call him a guide. He was just a guy who he meets people over the years. He puts them on the list. The list are people who he's interested in meeting or bringing together, okay, other people. And I made it on the list. I was flattered by that. And so he sent out the email. I didn't know I was on the list. And I think one day he did send me an email, said, you're on the list. Be on the lookout for an email. Email came through. I responded yes. And then I looked at the hike. I didn't care what it was. I'm like, I'm not missing. I'm going. Whatever it is, I'm going to do it. So it was long. There were a lot of, long days. But that's fun. I mean, you're just walking and talking to people. That's it.
No what are long days? Like hour-wise?
Like day 2, we went 18 miles. Day 3, we did 13 miles. To get into our first backpacking spot, it's about an hour. And then the 4th day was about an hour and a half. So day 2 and day 3 were long days. And there was nothing to do except you just kind of walk and you look next to you and you're like, oh, hey, tell me about, I don't know, where you grew up. Tell me about whatever. And you find yourself talking for like an hour and then something happens. Somebody has to go to the bathroom, whatever. So let's say that person drops off and then you find yourself next to somebody else and you're like, what's up? How you doing? Tell me about, your family or whatever it is really fun.
Sometimes those are like the most engaging conversations is with strangers that you're hiking with, because we're all out there for the same thing, to either get to the end of this trail or get to the summit of this mountain. And it just makes it a lot more enjoyable when it's not just you in your head, but you can have like intellectual conversations or lighthearted conversations. So we can take our minds off the fact that we've been hiking for 20 hours and on minimal sleep. So,
what's interesting, just thinking back to this trip, at the campsite, there's banter, right? But when you're walking, it's intelligent or thoughtful or philosophical conversations. It's so different. It really is. And then when you stop, maybe there's some banter, but it's just something in nature just brings out more meaningful conversations. I don't know if you notice that.
No, I agree.
Never thought about that. I just never have.
It's a natural healer, though. Nature is a natural healer. And so maybe we're able to tap into parts of ourselves that we normally can't in a busy world with work and in a busy world with notifications on our phone. And I think it just allows us to tap into the philosophical side of ourselves. The silence allows us to do that.
Yeah, I think that. All right, well, cool. Well, normally I launch into the podcast with the intro, but those who are listening, we're just going to do it now. I thought what we talked about at the beginning was worth keeping, so we're going to do it. So anyway, welcome to the Hike Strong podcast. My name is Marcus Shapiro. I'm a hiking strength and conditioning coach. And today's guest is Tia Banks. She traded pro basketball and flag football for her very first hike, which was summiting Kilimanjaro successfully. So since then, she's topped Pico de Orizaba, the highest volcano in North America, founded Mind Over Mountains, and now guides others up their own summits, including a group trip to Texas's Guadalupe Peak next month. So for Tia, the climb isn't just about reaching the top, it's about bringing others there too. So we'll unpack the training that powered her success, the quote unquote keep deciding mantra that got her through the challenging Kilimanjaro trek, and lessons from her new book, Mind Over Mountains. We're just gonna jump right in. I want to talk about training, okay? So we're gonna go right into training for hiking, and then we'll discuss some of your interesting anecdotes, philosophies, etc., all that kind of stuff. So I often preach, and those who listen to my podcast regularly, I talk about the Fit for Trips Big Five. So to get in shape for big iconic hikes, walk inclines, walk stairs, walk far, walk lunges, and HIIT training. My question to you is, do any of those 5 pillars resonate with your own preparation? You can comment on that if you want. But I definitely want to talk about kind of like what the typical training week looked like when you were preparing for Kilimanjaro.
So I had never climbed a mountain before. The first mountain I had ever climbed was Kilimanjaro. And so I didn't really know how to train for a mountain, a high altitude mountain at that. So I think I did a lot of research, went on YouTube, found some videos. I'm like, okay, let me do some stadium stairs. I'd go to a local track and do stadium stairs for an hour straight. There's a trail not far from where I live. It's probably about 1,000 feet that you'll get in altitude, if that. So it's not very high, but I would hike that for 4 to 8 hours at times, at least once a week. Sometimes I'd wake up, and this was when I had a full-time job before I was a speaker full-time. I would wake up at 4 a.m. before my job. And I would walk around my neighborhood with a backpack on and 25 pounds in the backpack and hike for about 4 hours with that weight. And, you know, one thing that helped me a lot when it came to my training, Marcus, is I did hire a breathing coach. So I would go to this breathing coach once a week, and we did certain deep breathing to kind of like get my lungs prepared for this mountain. And so I would agree with you. Cardio is critical. I wouldn't say I did a lot of HIIT workouts. I just did a lot of endurance, long runs, long hikes, and a lot of incline, or as much incline as I could to get to where I am.
Okay. Were there any habits from your pro sports years that translated into mountain preparation?
Yeah. So, you know, as athletes, we're always trained to have the mind over matter attitude, you know, so most of training when it comes to sports is mental. And so I think that was easy for me to naturally tap into the mental exercise that it took to prepare for a mountain. And these would be things like positive self-talk. You know, it's an actual resilience skill to speak positively to yourself. So as I'm training, I'm like, keep going, Tia, keep deciding, keep believing, I can do this. And you'll notice a difference in how your body responds to that kind of language versus, oh, this sucks. Oh, my legs hurt. You know, your body feels everything that you say. So that's something that I learned in sports. And that's something that I also took into every single mountain that I climb.
In sports, there's that competitive component to it that you probably thrived on. I think in order to be a professional athlete, you got to thrive on that competition. You got to thrive on, and I don't know, for you, it was worried more about losing or just wanting to win so bad. You can comment on that if you want, but in this, let's just call yourself a mountain athlete. There really isn't that competition. It's now just you. You're just competing against yourself. So just talk to me about that transition.
Yeah, so when you're used to competing against other people, it was a big change for me because like you said, on mountains, you're really competing against your mindset. You're competing against the negative thoughts that are telling you, why are we doing this again? But I found it's not about the competition on mountains. It's about reaching deeper in yourself, like a level that you've never been to. I always say that mountains actually brought me closer to my creator, to God. And there really is no comparison when it comes to the sports competition and hiking mountains, because I do it for healing. That was my reason for hiking. It was to heal, spiritually heal, emotionally heal. I will say though, sometimes I do miss that competitiveness, but when you get to the summit of the mountain, you feel that same kind of adrenaline rush. It's like I'm doing something that some people never do. And so I still miss like the competitiveness of sports, but it gives me an adrenaline rush while I'm on a mountain. And when I get to the summit, I feel that same energy.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Was there a training element that you had never tried before, but proved essential for hiking success? So contrasting your preparation for basketball and for flag football, there was obviously some contrast there. What is it that was new to you? And you're like, okay, that's essential. Got to do that if you're going to have hiking success or summit success.
So I'm clear in that question. What's the difference between like the types of exercises and practices from flag football to basketball and mountain climbing? Or
actually, that's a good, I like that. Let's go with that. Particularly the listener who is obviously interested in how to get in shape for hiking, but, maybe didn't train like a professional athlete. Just, go ahead and share that. I think that would be interesting.
I feel like every sport, you have to be in a different kind of shape. So like basketball, it's a lot of sprinting back and forth, and then periods where you stop. I feel like football, as a receiver, it's a route. It's a one sprint and then a stop. I honestly feel like basketball took a lot more energy when it came to being in a certain kind of shape than football. But when it comes to mountain climbing, like there's a walking factor, right? There's a hiking, but there's the hike with the incline and then the altitude. So, I honestly don't think either one of those sports are really conducive for training for a mountain, because like I said, I think training for a mountain, you need long distance. You need to do more distance versus those two sports required a lot more sprint and quick energy. I think somebody who plays soccer would probably be easily suited to climb a mountain. Soccer, you're just running all the time. I forget how many miles they run in a game, but it has to be like 4+ miles in a game. And so I feel like when your heart rate is used to that kind of activity, that's great for a mountain. So I think soccer players would probably be well suited for a mountain, or people who do long distance.
Okay, interesting. If you had to credit just 2 practices for getting you to the Kili summit, which would they be and why?
Man, 2 practices to get me to the summit. Just 2? Because
just go, and I might flush out some other things later on. Yeah, whatever comes to mind. Yeah, you can say, you can give me 3 if you want, whatever. Yeah.
Well, the first thing is optimism, like finding a way to be as optimistic as possible, even when it sucks. Because the first day I was on that mountain, I couldn't breathe. And I had never been on a high altitude mountain. You do the research and you find that you're at 50% less oxygen than at sea level. So how can I be optimistic when I'm sick? I can't breathe and I'm ready to quit. It's finding the fact that, okay, I decided to get on this mountain. I'm here. I have supporters surrounding me. I'm not doing this alone. I still believe in myself. I'm just going to keep going. So, and then Marcus, people who are optimistic, they live 15% longer than those who are not. So I'd love to be optimistic on a mountain, because you're thinking some people don't even get to the summit. Some people, that is a fatal mountain. So using optimism is an advantage. It's a weapon that everybody should use in hiking and on mountain climbing. So that's number one, is be as optimistic as possible. Number two is definitely, I don't hike alone. I've never done a mountain by myself. It may have been one other person and that's it. But that one person could be the voice that you need to hear in a moment where you are ready to quit and go back down that mountain. There was a moment, I think this was summit night. And as I was hiking Kilimanjaro, it's 2:00 in the morning. 3:00 in the morning. We've been hiking for hours, negative temperatures, and my face is just windburned. And everything in me was saying, let's quit. And I remember looking up and I see my people that I started climbing this mountain with, they're coming down and I'm hours from the summit. And so I started to compare myself. You start to compare yourself to other people. Like, dang, they made it to the top. I want to be happy for them, but low key, I'm jealous. Like, I'm tired. I want to go back down to base camp. And I remember the wind had knocked me around because I lost 15 pounds in 6 days. And there was a moment where I took a step back and I felt a hand on my back. And I heard a voice say, keep going, Tia. And it was I call her my partner in climb, Sheena. And I think we all need partners in climb to help us in those moments where we do want to quit. So optimism got me to the top, and my partner in climb, my peak partners, my community, they helped me keep climbing.
Okay, that's cool. I think one thing that people don't have context about you is they don't know that when you arrived at Kilimanjaro, you were sick, really bad. So let's go back and talk about that, because I think that took a lot of courage to continue to climb. It also meant you probably had some amazing team with you, because to summit when you're sick is probably not that safe. So you had a team around you, whether that was the porters and the guides and your friends. So just talk about your emotions on, knowing that you were sick and, that you might not be able to do the climb. I'm going to let you take that wherever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I got sick before I even got to Africa. The moment I sat on the plane, I started sweating, I'm shaking, I'm cold, and I'm coughing on the plane. And this was right around COVID time, right? So a little bit after COVID. And getting to Africa, I went to customs, they gave me the nose swab to see if I had COVID. And it was negative, but my symptoms just got worse. And so when you feel bad, you're unmotivated. So imagine having to push through those emotions while being at the bottom of the highest freestanding mountain in the world. It was really hard for me to be positive or optimistic, like I said. So there will be times where the entire mountain, there wasn't much that I could say. There wasn't much motivating I could do for other people, because I'm just trying to make sure that I'm good. I'm ready to quit. But I would say that, again, having people around me to say, Tia, you can do this. I remember Will, I met him on the mountain. So I didn't know him before. William and Yvonne, they're from Zimbabwe. And they came along with me and Sheena. We were all in the same group. And I remember Will said, Tia, you give me hope. This is on day 3. He was like, you've been sick the entire time and you give me hope. He's like, keep climbing, sister. And I needed to hear that, because I'm like, I don't feel inspired to hike this mountain. You were talking about how many miles you had hiked, Marcus, here in Utah. And we're hiking 8-10 hours a day, summit night, 14 hours, negative temperatures, not getting a lot of sleep because the altitude, it affects you. I had the worst headache of my life on day 3. And, to say I had altitude sickness, a nurse probably would have told me you should have stopped at day 1. But sometimes there's a perseverance. I didn't want to give up just because I had adversity. I didn't invest that time training for 2 years. I didn't invest that money. I didn't invest the energy to just get there and say, well, at least I got to the bottom. At least I got here. So I kept making a decision every day to put one foot in front of the other, to progress forward. And that's what got me to the summit.
I wonder if part of what got you to the summit, being sick, was, again, going back to your pro athlete days. Because if you're sick, you're still playing. You got to be out there. Your team's counting on you. So I'm wondering if that's part of it. But my guess is with all your coaching that you do, or that for young kids, I bet you pull a lot of your pro athlete mental toughness or your pro athlete days and your experiences. And that's probably shaped some of what makes you a skilled mountain climber and your perseverance. You want to talk about that?
Definitely, being an athlete helps. But one thing that I learned, Marcus, is that so I grew up in a family where we say suck it up. Like everything is suck it up. And so I remember I was 6 years old and I was playing catch with my dad, and he threw the softball about 100 feet in the air, and the ball came crashing down, bounced off of my glove, hits me in the nose. And the whole time, my dad, he's like, TT, get your glove up, cover your face, cover your face. And I wasn't listening because I'm like, this feels more comfortable. I'm going to put my hand out. But the ball shattered my nose. And I'm 6. I'm holding a pool of my own blood. I'm on the ground in the fetal position. And you would think my dad would come over and just be like, it's okay. It's okay, Daddy got you. But in my family, we said what? Suck it up. My dad, he's like, you're going to be okay. Suck it up. And so like, I always had that mentality. And let's be honest, like sometimes that's not the best mentality to have, because it also meant that I can't tell anybody when I feel physical or emotional pain. And that means we're sweeping our emotions and how we really feel under the rug. And that's not healthy. So I had to find like the fine balance of when is this a good time to like persevere? And when is this a time where I need to stop and reflect on what pivots I might need to make? That's one thing that mountain climbing teaches you. It's when to know to push and when to be disciplined enough to stop. And because that was my first mountain ever, I didn't have that discipline. I was stubborn. I'm going to keep going. If I look back now, I probably shouldn't have kept going, but I did. And that's a safety issue, right? But God got me. Thankfully, God got me. I made it to the summit, but now I have that fine balance of knowing when it's time to push and knowing when it's time to stop. We're not going to make it. Let's try again another time.
That's good. I've had an experience like that where I thought I was going to die on a mountain, and I just feel like I can coach people much better. Having gone through that, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change a thing. I'd still endure that day because I know what it feels like, and I can tell when somebody might be experiencing the same thing and maybe stop them earlier in the climbing process. So you probably obviously you wouldn't change a thing. You made it to the summit.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that changed my life. I think there's a thin line. There's a thin line between pushing your limits and saying, okay, this is my limit. There's a thin line, and it's difficult to find what that line is or whether you should cross it or not. But that's what mountains train us to do. That's another reason why I hike, is because I can push my limits. I can see how much further I can push my body and my mind. And that's the kind of training we need in life. It makes us more resilient. It makes us able to bounce back from real life hardships, bankruptcy, financial hardships, relationships, your heart being broken, losing somebody you love, or experiencing grief. Like, we need to be able to know what our limits are and how to bounce back from those hard times.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't think people need to push themselves as hard as I did that one day on, it was a 14er in Colorado, Castle Peak, I think it was. I was sick and I should have never done it like you. Now, I wouldn't change it, neither would you, and we wouldn't encourage people to do that if they're in our care. But what is possible and people should experience is to go on really challenging hikes and treks. And they may find themselves thinking to themselves, how the heck am I going to make it from one campsite to the next? Or how am I going to make it back down the mountain? But you have to. And so you push yourself and you learn to stretch your capabilities and the possibilities. And we can't be afraid to do that. And that's partly where the training comes in. The training kind of mitigates those issues and keeps you safe so that when you do have to push yourself, you can do it because you've pushed yourself during your training. And now you have on the line, not just, I need to get through this workout. It's now I need to get back. I need to get back to the trailhead. And in those moments, you grow as a person. And very few people, I think, experience that intentionally. And so if your life's comfortable and you're sitting at a desk, you really should consider hiking, mountain climbing, things like that, because it's worth it. Any thoughts on that?
And not going alone. Again, it goes back to, you probably can push your limits a little bit more when you're with somebody who's experienced. So, I'm taking a group of amateurs on this hike to the Guadalupe Peak, the highest peak in Texas. But I've climbed, this will be my third time hiking this mountain, second time taking a group, and I'm bringing somebody else who's also hiked this mountain twice. So having someone who's experienced around you works to your benefit to push your limits a little bit more. And that's why I never hike alone. You know, some people like to do that. I don't. I believe in the quote, the lone wolf dies, but the tribe survives.
Okay, that sounds cool. And another saying, mind over mountains. Let's talk about that. Okay, so mind over mountains. It's a powerful phrase. I think maybe it's on Kilimanjaro, you know, that was running through your head. I don't know if you can bring us back to that exact moment where it kind of clicked and you were thinking mind over mountains. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so everybody, if you're an athlete or a life athlete, you know, you hear mind over matter. And the only thing that got me to the summit of Kilimanjaro, that first mountain, was my mindset. So I say mind over mountains. And coming down from that mountain, I decided to write a book. And that's what it's titled, is Mind Over Mountains. And so now everything that I do, you know, it has that mindset aspect of it, how to be resilient and how to overcome these mountains. The mountain of anxiety. I've struggled with anxiety myself. The mountain of depression. I've struggled with that myself. There are so many life mountains that people endure. And so it takes a certain mindset before you can physically overcome it. So mind over mountains is everything. I've actually been touring the country and speaking in schools and organizations on the same concept of using the right kind of mindset to overcome your life mountains.
Okay. And in the end, we'll get to that. We talk about how people can contact you, about maybe speaking to them, their organization, children's school. We'll get to that. There's another saying, keep deciding. So during your Kilimanjaro trek, you repeated the mantra, keep deciding. Tell us a little bit about that and how listeners can apply that same mindset, you know, on their own climbs.
Yeah. So with day one, having to be given oxygen, you know, there was a decision that I had to make. It was quit, go home, back to Texas, or keep climbing, keep deciding to climb. And honestly, when people will say, keep going, you can do it. But really what they mean is you just have to keep deciding to go. You have to choose. So every day it was a choice to take another step. Every day it was a choice to put my backpack on. Every day it was a choice to mentally lock in and say, I can do this. So I think everything is a decision to quit or keep going towards whatever goal it is. You want to get promoted or try to be the manager, keep deciding. Keep deciding to show up dressed like the manager. Keep deciding to go to conferences and lock in with other people who are like-minded. Keep deciding to stay focused on your budget. You say you want to get a house, and so you need to get out of debt. Like, these are decisions that you have to continuously make. And so for me, it was every day, every second, all the time, continuing to make the decision, no matter what.
Okay. And so when you came down from Kili, you said never again, not doing it. But then you went on to summit the highest volcano in North America, and now you guide others. So what changed inside you between like never again to, you know, like what's next? Let's go.
You know, I think it's just the competitiveness in me. So when you talk about being competitive, on a mountain, I had never experienced that type of pain, the emotional pain, the physical pain, the spiritual pain. And when the pain wears off, you can think a little bit more logically. Like, I really did that. I wonder what else I could do. And so let me write a book. Let me see how many more mountains I can climb. Matter of fact, let me help other people climb these mountains. And so an idea popped in my head the same moment that I got an idea to climb Kilimanjaro. I was just in meditation. I wrote in my journal, I want to climb the highest freestanding mountain in the world. The idea came, the goal was set, that I started to take action. And from that action, I was like, you know what? I want to climb 7 volcanic summits on 7 continents. So that's my next goal. And so I was like, maybe I should start with a mountain in North America. What's the highest volcano in North America? Found out it was Pico de Orizaba, and it's located in Puebla, Mexico. And so that's when I decided to just continue to take on mountains, because this is like my new basketball. This is my new flag football. This is the newness of who I am. One thing for your viewers, for anybody watching, is be willing to evolve. Life is an evolution. Evolve from the person that your family labeled you as. Evolve from your old friendships or your old families. Not to say you got to leave people behind, but sometimes if you want to climb higher in life or reach another level of yourself you didn't know existed, you got to do something different. And that's what I did. Nobody in my family has ever hiked a mountain. So lean into something different and be willing to evolve.
On that similar note, I remember you telling me that after I think it was when you tore your ACL, that your identity was your sports, right? And so I'm going to go a little off topic here for a moment. You asked your friends to tell you what you'll have to remind me. Yeah. Like what you were good at, what you should do, what you should try. Because again, your identity was all wrapped up as you as a professional athlete. And now that was gone.
Yeah. And just for clarity, I had a grade 5 cartilage tear in my right knee.
Cartilage tear, that's what it was. Okay.
So when you're a student athlete or when you're labeled an athlete, like your identity, when it's stripped away from you, I couldn't play the sport that I loved. I had all these opportunities lined up with Team USA to travel the world, to play sports and start to get paid after years and years of actually paying to play. Like I went into a deep depression. And so I knew that I needed to give my why some options, because the only reason why I felt like I was on this planet was to be an athlete. And so that's one thing when I talk to students or even adults, like give your why some options. So I asked my family, I asked colleagues that I worked with, I asked friends, what could you see me doing besides being an athlete? And people, and this is like in group chats or direct messages, people would say, Tia, you're a great communicator. Like you should be a coach. And I also took surveys. So there's plenty of surveys. Ask ChatGPT, go to Google, and take some personality tests. Find out what else you're good at. Because to me, I only thought I was athletic and that was it. But come to find out, I'm a leader. I've got some great leadership qualities. Come to find out, I'm really good at solving problems. I'm really good at bringing people together. I'm an excellent communicator. And so those were the things that helped me evolve from being this football, basketball athlete to now I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I'm an author and a mountaineer, a resilience expert. So being willing to ask those questions, collect the data from your friends, your family, all the sites that or if you went on Google or ChatGPT to identify your personality, your skills, and then make a decision and go with that decision.
Okay, I like it. Let's talk about gear for a moment. Do you have a favorite piece of gear that you want to talk about? Or one or two things, 3 things, whatever?
A favorite piece of gear. So my hiking boots. I love my hiking boots. They're water resistant. They've withstood the test of time. They've seen beautiful sights. To be honest with you, Marcus, I don't have like a name brand that I just have to have. Even my backpack, I'm about due to upgrade. I think I got my first hiking backpack on Amazon. It's a no-namer. So when it comes to gear, like I'm not picky. I'm not picky when it comes to my trekking poles. I'm like, do these work? I've had trekking poles confiscated at TSA flying. And so like, I don't get attached to those gear labels. Right? I think the greatest piece of equipment, and I will always say this, is the person that you bring to hike with you.
Okay. I got to leave it at that. That sounds good. All right. That's the gear. That isn't the end of the conversation. That sounds like the end of a conversation right there. But I got too much to ask you. So we got to keep going. There's something I call it a musical journey. Actually, I call it musical trekking. So when I was training for a backpacking trip, I don't know, 6 years ago, whatever, I came up with this idea where you pick an artist and you listen to that artist. You listen to their first album and you listen to song 1 and you go all the way through it. And then you go to their next album and their next album and so on. So you get the context of their music, because a lot of times you'll just hear something. See, I go back, I was born in 71. So I talk about the radio and records and cassettes and things like that. So, we couldn't go to like Spotify or Apple Music and just pick a song, okay? Mm-hmm. So I was like, I want to go back again and get the context for that song I loved. What song was before it? What song was after it? Hey, what was the first song on that album? And just kind of listen to it in context. So I went back, I listened to like Led Zeppelin, I listened to the Beatles, and I listened to The Who, The Police, a lot of bands. And so let's say at the end of the hike, I didn't finish going through my musical journey. Well, that's fine. I knew where I stopped, so I'd just start back again for my next training hike. This is all for training hikes, right? So anyway, let's pretend you're going to go on this musical journey, right? Give us like an artist or two, like where we should listen. All right.
I love this question.
First album, first song, let's go. You know? What's that artist? Or two?
So honestly, when I hike, I have my own playlist. And so on my playlist, like one of those first songs is called Mount Everest by Labyrinth. And it starts out like, Mount Everest ain't got shit on me, 'cause I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of and that's the energy I want when I'm hiking.
That's great.
So that's by Labyrinth, which is really cool because when I climb Pico de Orizaba, there is a part on the mountain called the Labyrinth, and it means maze. It's one of the most challenging parts on this mountain. And so as I was hiking that mountain, that song came on. And then this is my classical side. So I like this artist. His name is Hans Zimmer, and he has this song called Mountains. And I love the progression of the music. I really enjoy like orchestra and instruments. And then I don't have a problem with like Justin Timberlake. I like me some Justin Timberlake. There's some albums that I can listen to straight through. But I'm also a 90s R&B. In sports, I used to work out to 90s R&B. So you just can't go wrong with that.
Well, again, any particular artist, 90s R&B artist, or we'll leave it at that. They can just
Aaliyah, Sade. Love the male groups like Jagged Edge, 112.
Did you say Sade?
Sade.
Oh yeah, good stuff. Sade. Yeah. I remember her back in the day.
Yeah.
And that was more like R&B, jazzy.
Yeah.
I remember when I met my wife. We weren't married at the time, but we had met, and one thing we loved was music. And she had a CD or a DVD of Sade. And I remember these two guys on stage flanking her left and right. And I think they both had these Les Paul, and I love guitar. They had these Les Paul guitars, and I thought, man, good stuff. Anyway, you just reminded me of that.
That's a dope guitar. That Les Paul, that's a dope guitar.
Oh yeah, what do you know about guitars?
What do I know?
Oh my gosh, look at that. I know people listening won't be able to see it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love my guitars.
Yeah, so
that's great. I got me a 69 Les Paul.
Oh, that's dope.
But apparently it's got a sunburst top, which apparently back in 69 it didn't. Like your guitar, it looked sunburst top but apparently when my guitar was made, they didn't make a sunburst when they looked at the serial number. So I went to a vintage guitar place and they gave me a better deal on it. I don't know if it was a better deal, but it might have had another finish on it at the time. But I guess the owner thought it was cool to do a sunburst. So anyway, I love me some guitar. Man, I could talk about that all day, but let's talk about your book real quick and we'll wrap it up. So you wrote a book called Mind Over Mountains, Life-Changing Strategies to Overcome Adversity. So what's the core takeaway you hope sticks with readers long after they close that last page?
Yeah, so I think the core takeaway is that we all have experienced mountains. I share a little bit more of the mountains that I've faced in my personal life. And then I also give more details of what it felt like to hike Kilimanjaro and more details of that experience. But it's also a workbook. So it's a workbook for people to say, what kind of mountains have I faced? And how did I overcome them? Is a reference, a guide, so that when you experience something that was unexpected, you know that you've been able to overcome it and you're reminded of your own story. I believe we all have our own stories of resilience. I call them summit stories. And so it's a guide to remind you that you are a mountain climber in life and you can overcome any mountain that you face.
Okay, sounds good. And finally, where can people follow your upcoming climbs, grab the book?
Yeah.
For speeches? Just where can they reach you?
Absolutely. So go to www.tiabanks.com. The book's on there. We got merch on there, and you can book me to speak. I speak in schools most of the time, but organizations bring me in also. And so if you feel like your organization or school can benefit from resilience education, the internal and external variables from a mountain climber's perspective, man, I'd love to add value to your group.
Do you want to play your guitar? Do you want to play some? Are you confident enough to do that? Do you do that? Okay. All right, good.
I'm not. So I've been playing for 10 years, right? But I get so focused on one thing. Those guitars, they've collected some dust. I'd probably have to go on YouTube. One thing I'm really good at is listening to a sound and I can play it. but I forget. And so I have not played in a while. I don't have confidence like that. I'm confident in my mountain climbing skills, my speaking skills, guitar. Not right now, sir.
Not yet. Okay. All right. Excellent. All right, Tia, this was so much fun. I definitely want people to reach out to you, go to your website. It was awesome. Hey, maybe we'll hike together sometime.
Man, that would be
might,
dope.
That might happen. That might happen. I'm kind of feeling it. Anyway.
Let's do it.
Well, look, it was great to meet you. Thanks for sharing all your anecdotes and philosophies with my listeners. I appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. Bye.
See you.
That concludes this episode of the Hike Strong podcast. I'm committed to keeping all of the episodes for free. All I ask is that you subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends. My goal is to build a vast community of hikers with the confidence to crush any local or global trail. I hope you will join me in this endeavor. So until next time, train, hike, repeat, and as always, I'm here to support you every step of the way.